I'm just Okay, so if we get to any place where you guys feel you want to share something so intimate and you want me to pause the recording, we will pause the recording. Welcome to Reloom Foundation webinar. So we normally have this webinar second and fourth Monday of the month at 7 o'clock. But this summer we're trying a new time at 4 o'clock so we can give our Nigerian folks and those in London opportunity to like join and be a part of this wonderful conversation. My name is Sherry Adeosun. I'm the uh, president of the Loom Foundation, and I have my team with me today. The person that will be presenting with me I'll let her introduce herself. She's our chief of staff. Florence, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Florence Weideman. I'm the Chief of Staff of Berlin Foundation, and we'll be presenting on social emotional learning with y'all today.
Yeah, this is really a wonderful topic, and I believe, is really a tool that can be used. Thank you for that, Miriam. Is a tool that can be used to enhance relationship, to build relationship, self-awareness, and social connection. Okay, I'm gonna, Florence, take it away.
So, social emotional learning, so ESL. So, social emotional learning, that is something that's really important for our everyday life. So, we learn about math in school, we learn about English, we learn how to write, we learn how to read, but do we actually really get taught how to properly interact with people around us? That is one of the biggest things we have to do in our everyday lives. And it's something that we just assume people just automatically know, or that is something you're born with, and that's not necessarily true. A lot of the times these things actually need to get taught, and it's also very helpful that they're taught more directly as opposed to just watching how people behave and deducing that. So here we are want to understand, like, what are the keys to better relationships in our home and our school and our work, and understanding that. We move to the next. So, as I was touching on, it is the development of self awareness, that emotional regulation, and that interpersonal skills. And that is how we are able to thrive. I think, okay, no, I thought I was frozen. And how we can thrive in all aspects of our lives. So the way we're going to act with our friends and what's appropriate with them is going to be different from how you're going to interact with your boss and what's appropriate with them. And understanding how to navigate those relationships, also how to manage our own emotions and how to mitigate other people's emotions in order to have a healthier, fuller, and deeper life and be more empathetic to the people around us, and just have just better in general social interactions with people. So there are four components. We're going to try and go over two of them today, which is first, self-awareness, knowing yourself. How are we meant to improve if we don't know ourselves? For example, I'm sure a lot of you have seen American Idol. I love watching American Idol growing up. You would see the auditions, and how many times you would see people thinking they're the most amazing singer in the world, and they open their mouth and it's like frogs are dying, right? So we need to ensure that we have self-awareness. So just like they need the awareness to know what their musical talent is, we also need awareness to know where are we at emotionally, what are certain things that we can handle, and if we have issues with certain things, why those things are coming up, so we are not pushing the emotions on people that may not be pertinent. So self-awareness is really important for those relationships. And then social connection, so engaging meaningfully with others. So that is also tying into the differences in relationships and engaging meaningfully. So maybe if you are a professor and you're talking to another professor and you're going into the intricacies of biochemical engineering or something with them, that might be an appropriate interaction and engagement with them, and they may be really engaged in the conversation. Oftentimes, if you tried to have that same conversation with a 5 year old, you lost them, right? So it's very important that we are engaging meaningfully with others, not just It's not enough to just have the interaction happen. It's important that there's understanding and communication.
Yes. Okay, so I think the other part that I would like to add before we move on is also in social connection is the empathy piece of it. And we're gonna dive deeper into it even as we go on in the PowerPoint. So the other two topics, the self-management and relationship skills, we may not get into that today. We'll do that in 2 weeks, but we're gonna try our best to address self-awareness and social connection today.
A lot. A lot.
So, self awareness is identifying emotions, having accurate self perception, recognizing your strengths, limitations, and self confidence. So, we're going to go more deeply into those different aspects. So, when you're identifying your emotions, so this goes a connection between the physical feelings you're having and the intellectual feelings that you are having. So, if we are, for example, angry, our heart rate might start rising. We might start getting short of breath. Maybe your face gets red. Maybe you start shaking. Some things may happen. So those are the physical cues of anger. And then maybe the mental cues, like, is there negative self-talk, or is there a negative talk about the person in front of you? Maybe that's who's getting you angry, or maybe it's negative talk. Maybe it's physical. So like really understanding and labeling those things and having that connection with our body, that's also a key point in understanding our emotions.
Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry. Good.
go ahead.
Yeah, so it's very important, to not dismiss our emotion. Because dismissing your emotion is not going to make them go away. You have to identify your emotion, even though we know we don't allow that emotion to now control us, but you have to identify them. You have to be able to recognize also the triggers that bring those emotions. Really being aware. Sometimes a lot of us are more aware of our partner, of our children, of the people we live with, than of ourselves. I think it's about time with such we put the mirror in front of us and really be intentional and recognizing those emotions. Florence.
Yes, sorry, I'm chewing. So, and can we move to the next?
Okay.
So now we also have identifying our accurate self-perception as well. So this is recognizing your strengths and limitations and having that sense of confidence and purpose. So a lot of the times people are like, oh, be realistic, be realistic. And in actuality, a lot of the times, really, they're really saying limit what you're capable of doing. So you want to be very careful of not conflicting, having an accurate self-perception with, okay, I can't do these things because I know I can't do them. It's more having a deeper understanding of who you are as a person and to be able to comfortably push your limits. So, for example, if somebody in school is always getting 85s and 90s without trying, right? Then having a goal of like, oh, I want to just make sure I'm passing school, that's a very low goal. That's a goal that shows a low self-perception, because if you are getting 85s and 90s, you're already passing. That is a goal that you're already achieving, right? So we want to make sure that our goals are challenging us, but are reflective of what our capabilities are. So we want to make sure we are having that fine balance. So that's why it's also very important in terms of setting realistic goals. It's also like your goals shouldn't be too easy for you, but they also shouldn't be something that is unachievable for you because of certain limitations. So if you want to be if your goal is to be a pilot, pilots are required to have 20/20 vision. If you don't have 20/20 vision, that's kind of like an unrealistic goal, right? So it's more of making sure you understand your limitation and not purposely limiting yourself unnecessarily. Dr. Sherry, do you have something to add?
I think that's really a wonderful balance, and the way you explain it is really straight to point. And I think we need to look at it and think about what is our strength. Even as we're seeing this presentation, don't think about another person that is not in the room. We're talking about you, about me, Sherry. This is all about you, not about another person, right? That you're trying to save. Think of your strength. What are your strengths? Hone your strength. And then also, what are your limitations and what are the tools you need maybe to elevate your limitation? And is it possible for you to become strength, or is it something for me as a leader? When I think of my strength, I need to also think of my limitation and find out tools. Who are the people around me that I can bring around me that are strong in the area of my limitation? People that will pour into that part of limitation or that will help me to overcome the limitation, or that will just do the part that I'm limited in. I'm not good. I can't create an app. We need an app for our one-on-one tutoring. What do? We have to consult with a specialist who is a specialist in that area. So think about ways you can really intentionally apply these things into your day-to-day life. Because if you come onto this webinar and you go away and you're not taking notes, it's going to be just another day, another hour you just spent. Oh, that was so great. And that's where it's going to end. But if you want this interaction to be something that's like a changing point in your life where you be like, wow, from that day I heard and I saw that webinar, I started to do A, B, C, D, and E. So we want you to actively engage in us through thinking and really thinking of ways that this can make your life different, you know.
Yes, you definitely also touched on some of the points in the next slide about limitation, strengths and limitations. And just to reiterate some of that, sometimes as human beings in a society, we all have different talents, we all have different weaknesses. And sometimes we focus way too much on what our weaknesses are. Yeah, maybe there are some things that we do need to improve on, but a lot of the times there are things that maybe we don't necessarily need to improve on a limitation because there are people who are already good at that thing, and we can focus on the things that we're really good at and what our strengths are. So we definitely want to find a balance of like promoting and building our strengths. Also, there may be certain limitations that we want to improve on, but we also want to make sure we're not overly dwelling on what we lack because there are so many things that we have that we can use already.
Yeah, the other thing that's coming to my mind, even as you're saying that, is, sometimes especially those of us that are like Christian and raised in a Christian environment, there's the overarching feeling of humility, and sometimes that can be to our disadvantage in the sense that people don't want to talk about their strength because it may come like you're being prideful. So we need to find a balance of elevating ourselves. Because just imagine the self-negative talk of the limitation. We need to do more of that in our strength. That thank God I'm good in this. I can do this. Not bragging in it, but recognizing it and knowing that this is my area of strength, and being able to have that conversation with people about your area of strength, and if the area of limitation, reaching out to people that can support that area. And I think it's important, really owning into our strength and really elevating our strength will help us against a lot of negative talk. I don't know. What do you think about that, Florence? That perspective?
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree on how important it is to really also understand your strengths and use them. They were given to you for a reason.
Mm.
And it is important that we actually utilize our strengths for the betterment of ourselves, our relationships, and society as a whole.
Okay, great. It reminds me of when you go for an interview. When you go for an interview and you're trying to talk about what you have done, what you can do, it's not the time to be humble. It's the time to just lay it all out, what you've done. Okay, go ahead, Florence.
So with our self-confidence, so self-confidence isn't just tying on ability. So a lot of people mistake, well, I'm going to have confidence once I'm able to do a thing. Confidence comes before you even are able to accomplish or even do the thing involved. Because if you're not building the confidence piece, you will be one of the top people in your field, you'll be succeeding in the things that you want to achieve, and you'll still feel like it's not enough, or you're not worthy of that, or it was a fluke, or having imposter syndrome. So it's very important to build that confidence. And that is understanding and being aware of your competency, and understanding that you have the capabilities to do this, or if you don't currently have the capabilities, you have the capability to learn. You're able to do these things, and supporting your motivation and being resilient. So if things don't necessarily work out the way you intend them to, bouncing back, figuring out a different step, and having that confidence in your ability to make something right. So if we're using an example with, say, you're teaching a child how to wash plates for the first time, and they're messing up, they're being too reckless with the plates, and they break a plate. We can make them more confident, be like, oh, plates break. You just got to be more careful next time. This is how you wash a plate. Or we can have a big reaction, and we can say, oh my goodness, you're breaking my plates. You know how much a plate costs, this and that. So we are taking away that confidence in the ability to do the task. So we want to make sure, instead of, so we're going to be that person for ourselves. So instead of talking down on ourselves and saying, like, see, you couldn't complete this, you're going to ruin everything, let's have a confidence in our abilities. Like, oh, yes, I made a little mistake, but I can learn from my mistakes, or I can improve better, or I didn't do this as well as I wanted to, but I can always improve. And that's also a source of self-confidence, not just in the abilities, but trust in yourself that you can complete them.
Yes. Wow. That's really amazing. I like the way the example you use about washing plates, that relationship between a parent and a child. And as they grow up, we intentionally sometimes build strength and confidence in our children, but sometimes we may not in some of our overreaction areas. So, and that's the same thing with ourselves. What are you doing to yourself daily? What are you pouring in yourself daily? We're good to pour it into other people, helping other people. Are you taking time to evolve into a better version of yourself? What are you pouring into yourself? Believe in your ability. Encourage yourself. But the Christians, encourage yourself in the Lord and believe in your ability to be able to accomplish the task. If we think of all those people that created great scientists, they had to do something over and over again. Failure is a part of the process, but they believe in something, they believe in their ability, right, Florence? And then they kept at that experiment. They try another way. Okay, this way didn't work. Okay, we can't do that way anymore. Exit out. Let's try this way again. Believing in your ability to accomplish the task. In each and every one of you, I always tell the young people, I believe in you guys because youth is on your side, wisdom is on your side, the resources are on your side. Now you have to just believe in yourself. Say yes to yourself. Because sometimes society will say no to us. Sometimes we don't have teachers around us or people around us that will say yes to us. We have to say yes to ourselves. We have to show up for ourselves every day. Show up for ourselves every day. Florence. Oh,
Absolutely.
sorry. I have to move it.
Yes. So with self-awareness, right? That's the first relationship. So the first relationship you have is with yourself. So you want to really make sure that it's a healthy relationship. Let's not have an abusive relationship with ourselves, right? Let's make sure that we are kind, we are thinking, and we are improving ourselves, right? Oftentimes we would say things to ourselves that we would never say or even think to saying to one of our friends or our best friends. In fact, if somebody said that to our best friends, we're probably like, we're going to have some words with them, right? But we think it's okay to say that to ourselves. So are you a friend to yourself?
Love it. I love it.
And yeah.
Are you a friend to yourself? That should be in capital letters of gold going across your screen. Boom, 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 boom. are you a friend to yourself? That's a very reflexive question. Are you a friend to yourself? So the next time you start to talk negative, talk down on yourself, whether you're thinking it or you're acting it, just let this thing check you. Am I a friend to myself? Am I a friend to myself? Oh, amazing. Yes, go ahead, Florence.
So ways to build that friendship with yourself and build that relationship with yourself is journaling your feelings. So there are multiple ways to do this. One way would be, say you're feeling something, say someone says something to you or does something and it gives you a negative reaction. So journaling about that, how you felt in the moment, what they said, it can help you decipher, because oftentimes we are angry about something someone did, but maybe we don't have a deep understanding as to why that specific thing made us angry. So maybe it has to do with them saying something genuinely rude. Maybe they didn't intend to be rude, but because of past situations, this is something that we're particularly sensitive to, and being aware of that and in ourselves. Another way about journaling your emotions, especially if you maybe have difficulty deciphering like what you're feeling, is writing down the physical feelings. So what are you physically feeling from that emotion? And that can help connect you to what those feelings are intellectually, because sometimes we have a disconnect from what we intellectually think is wrong and what our body is saying, right? So sometimes we can say, like, oh, this doesn't hurt me, it's fine, but our heart rate is beating fast, we're getting flushed, we're getting angry. Your body is experiencing it differently than what your head is experiencing it, right? So we want to bridge that connection so that we're in unity with our entire system. And then another thing that we can do is emotion check-ins. So in that, we are connecting with like what we are feeling throughout the day, how we react to those things. So it's important to make sure we are connected with ourselves and we're having that deep relationship. And then we can also do reflective practices. So with that, that goes that ties into journaling and being reflective. So taking that breath, taking that breathing, and writing things down. We said the journaling, and I'm just gonna say it again. Journaling is such an amazing tool to understanding yourself, because it helps put what is in your brain onto paper, and oftentimes seeing it on paper really helps you understand deeper what you're feeling or why something hurt you, as well as saying it out loud. Sometimes saying something out loud can make you realize that something you're thinking of, oh, I didn't realize how silly this was until I actually said it out loud, or I didn't realize how that I always knew what the answer was until I said it out loud. So great things about reflective practices: say what you're feeling out loud. It doesn't necessarily need to be to a person. You can be in a room by yourself and just say it out loud. That's really helpful for reflective purposes, as well as writing those things down.
Yeah, thank you, Florence. One of the things that actually also helped me with some of these things is I recently I had like a coach maybe about 6 months ago. I got a coach from work. He's a professional coach. It's really amazing how things can fall in line when you're at a place in your life. And I was thinking, oh, you know what? I need to have some kind of a coach, like not just a therapist, but a coach. So, and then around the same time, anyway, I got the coach from work, and we would talk. I would talk about situations, and then she would ask me, "What are you thinking about the situation? How did that make you feel?" And then as I begin to write down how it made me feel, and I reflect on it, and 9 out of 10, I will come up with the solution for the situation, even by just talking to her. So even though that can happen with you talking to someone that's a therapist or a coach, but it can also happen at times with you talking to yourself, like Florence said, writing it down, reflecting on what you've written down. And for those of you that are Christian, you can align it with the word of God. For those of you that have like principles, you align it with the principles of how you have said you want to live your life. Does it align with it? Is this good for me or is it against me? Does it reflect me being a friend of myself? So I think I believe those things are very important. Journaling your feelings, acknowledging them, like, okay, this is what I feel. Okay, I feel really angry about this and I need a moment. Give yourself grace. I feel really upset about this. I need a moment. But you don't want to take forever. You can take a moment, to be able to process those feelings, write them down, think about it. How do I get out of this? And things like that. I don't know if Florence want to add anything else to what I just said about that.
Um, I wanted to add that also, so in our daily lives, there are instances where we have to manage our emotions. So for example, if you just had an argument with your sister and you're very angry, and then you have to go to the store and buy something, are you going to now just yell at the poor cashier checking you out because you're angry? No, right? So in that moment, even if we're upset, we don't have the right to be mean or rude people to somebody completely third party person, right? So in our regular life, we need to make sure we are managing our emotions. So if there's an instance in your life where you have a difficulty managing your emotions on something, that is something that's a great thing to start journaling about. So you if you're feeling sad about something, it's very hard for you to not bleed the sadness onto everything else and focus on what you have to do at hand. That's something that you can also really address. So we want to make sure we also have that emotional regulation. So that's something to really think about as well.
Yeah, the emotional regulation, I love it. And I also call it something like dissociating ourselves from that feeling. Like that is not you. That's what you're feeling. And there's a reason that you're feeling that. And you can process that feeling, but you don't want to carry it over whereby it now becomes you. I'm angry with A. Now I see B, C, D, E. All that anger is filtering through everything I'm dealing with that person, you know. Yeah, so that's really being intentional. And that's part of maturity, it's part of growth, And I love, no matter how old you are on this platform, I know the age ranges from teens to like really in the 80s. We all have room to be able to do better. Wherever we are emotionally, we can always grow and be better.
Another thing I wanted to also mention is how we all understand physical pain like is necessary for our survival, right? If you can't feel pain, you can't know that a bone is broken. You can't know to not touch the hot stove. You can't know a lots of things that can be very harmful to you. So pain is necessary for our survival. In the same way, emotional pain is also something that is normal and necessary for our survival. If we are feeling negative feelings, it's not necessarily something to run away from. It's something to say, okay, evaluate what is the issue, what is wrong. Just like if we get a cut and we're like, oh, I have a pain on my arm, and we're going to evaluate, okay, what's wrong? Okay, oh, I need this. I need to clean out the wound. I need to put on a band aid. The same with the emotional pain. If I'm feeling sad, okay, what am I feeling sad about? Why am I sad about this? Is this something that I need to physically change my environment? I need to change the situation. Do I need to address this? Or is it something that I need to internally improve myself? Because sometimes, a lot of the time, sometimes you may be sad and it may be something internal, but it may be something external. And it's your emotions, your body telling you that something externally needs to change, right? So this is why journaling things is also a very good way to decipher and understand where those emotional wells are coming from so that you can fix them and patch them up.
I think, fine, that's really a wonderful comparison because it also reminds me of even like you're talking about, as a practitioner, you know that when someone is having pain, you having pain in your leg, my knee hurts, right? Oh, why does my knee hurt? It's a sign, oh, my knee is swollen. That's a sign telling you something else is going on internally that has to be fixed. Or maybe I need to go to the doctor and do an x-ray so they can discover what is going on with my knee and then be able to accurately give me a treatment, some kind of intervention that will bring healing and resolution to what I'm going through. So the same thing like you said, with the emotional pain or emotional feeling, we need to process it so we can sort of get to the root of it and uproot it and be able so that the next time the same emotion happen, we just get better at handling. It's not that you're not gonna ever feel upset or ever feel angry, but it just like different. You manage it differently, right? And I don't know if Florence can relate to this or anybody on this platform. You sort of get out of it faster, right? Yeah. So the practice of writing down your emotions, thoughts, experiences to better understand and manage them. In social and emotional learning, SEL, this strategy supports self-awareness and self-management competency by helping individuals recognize emotional patterns, reflect on their responses, and build emotional regulation skills. Florence spoke a lot about that. Do you want to say anything more to emotional regulation skills? Okay. Okay. So I think we should, let me see. This is going to the next one. Okay. Okay, let's do this one. Go ahead. Emotional check-in.
We touched on this a bit, and just to reiterate, it's important to make sure you're reflecting on your current feelings, and this also really supports that self-awareness competency because it's able to build and identify your emotional state. What is your baseline? Some people's baseline is a lot higher and more high energy than somebody else's baseline. So, what is your emotional baseline? What Build that emotional vocabulary. Something that's really great for people who have trouble naming their emotions is an emotional wheel that can be more specific in describing things. So angry is a very vague emotion. You could be angry and it could be because you're frustrated with something. It could be you could be angry, but it's because you're more apathetic to a situation. So it's very good to build that emotional vocabulary. um, and if anybody would like, I can send an image of what an emotional wheel looks like to help with naming emotions and making thoughtful choices based on how you feel. So, how to act, like being angry is not a sin, right? But we can do things that can be harmful to people because of our anger or because of our emotions. So we need to also ensure that our emotions are not controlling us.
Wow.
We're still acting with kindness, empathy, and patience with everybody around us, despite how we're feeling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The pathway to maturity, right? Not being controlled by your emotions. Yeah. Great. Excellent. Okay, so this is the overview of what we went through thus far about self-awareness. We added definition of self-awareness, which is the first relationship with yourself, right? Recognizing your own emotions, your thought, and values, and how they influence your behavior. We spoke about the four components of self-awareness: identifying emotions, accurate self-perception, recognizing strengths and limitations, self-confidence. And we also spoke about practical tools, journaling, emotional checking. How am I feeling right now? How am I feeling right now? Right? Reflective practices, guided questions, guiding yourself, trying to just figure out why am I feeling this way? How can I move from my sandy ground, sandy foundation of feeling to a solid ground? So application in relationship, the more we understand our triggers, boundaries, and communication style, the healthier our connection can be. Before we go to the next topic, I would like to hear from the audience, and I'd like Florence, first of all, to talk a little bit about triggers in self-awareness.
Okay, so there are different forms of triggers. There may be triggers that trigger you physically, that makes you feel unsafe. So it can be an anxiety trigger. Maybe someone says something to you that reminds you of something that made you feel very unsafe as a child. And that's something that automatically triggers your heart rate to go up, you to start breathing shallow and getting all nervous. Or there could be something, maybe a way somebody physically touches you, maybe someone grabs you and you don't, that's something that physically triggers you. So those are things and making sure we're understanding our triggers. And this way, we can also communicate these things with people around us, people who are in our group, people who care about us, so that they can be aware that these are things that they should be conscious of, so that they are not triggering you. Also, while we are also working on our triggers, because certain things, right? Certain things can be, maybe somebody does something inappropriately, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our reaction is something that is proportionate to what a person is doing. If someone is touching your shoulder in a way that you don't like, um, a typical normal reaction would be to be like, "Oh, can you please not do that? I don't really like that," as opposed to maybe a full-blown anxious breathing and stuff because somebody is doing that. So we want to make sure we are exposing ourselves to situations where maybe we feel a little uncomfortable, just a little bit, like, okay, say you don't like talking on the phone at all. Practice, if you're going to order food, just practice calling them in. That's a little exposure therapy to calm down and realize, like, oh, this is not a big deal. Oh, I can do this. I can do this. So, but don't go too far, or don't go too far if something is triggering you, because if you go too far and then you have a negative reaction, that can do a lot more damage than just going a little bit by little bit. So this also helps in terms of journaling, because because first you need to be aware of what your triggers are to even work on them. So that's where journaling comes in. And is there anything else you'd like to add, Dr.?
Yeah, I know what they say in medicine and nursing is if you know your triggers for example, asthma. I always use health as an example because that's my go-to place. For example, asthma, there's always triggers for asthma. Welcome, Sister Grace. There's always trigger. I know Sister Grace will relate to this. There's always triggers for people that have asthma. So they have to recognize what their triggers it. Maybe the trigger is maybe someone is cutting grass or when it's very cold or when they're having just regular upper respiratory infection. So what do? They always sort of have like some kind of way they guide themselves to make sure they're not exposed to the trigger. So like for instance, you have to know the trigger first. Once you know the trigger, it's okay for you to protect yourself. And part of coping strategy is knowing how to just not just like how to deal with the emotions when they come, but how to prevent yourself from being exposed to those triggers that will bring those emotions, creating that safe space for yourself and those boundaries and reinforcing to the boundaries to the people around you in a nice way, saying things like, you know what, I don't have the boundary, or I can't talk tonight, or I'm not feeling great tonight. I think I'm just going to go to my room. Because you already know, for me, when I'm like super stressed and I'm dealing with a lot of things, I can see when I'm getting to a place where if someone wants to talk to me, I can maybe just snap a little bit at them. So once I recognize I'm getting close to that, it's time for me to be like, okay, time out. And I'll just have an alone time to build myself, restore myself so that I can be able to do what I need to do. So yeah. So we'd like to hear from you guys. You guys kind of mute and say whatever before we go to the next part. It's already what's the time? Oh, 4:42. Maybe we would not be able to go to the next part. But let's hear from you before we go on from the audience. You can unmute. Let me see.
Hello, Sister Sherry. Good afternoon, everyone.
There we go.
Nicole here. Um, the topic is very interesting. I've learned a lot. And from my experience, as a child, I've never learned about self-awareness. I had to learn that as an adult. But what I did recognize was I was just angry all the time, so that I was aware of. And then I started to work on it, but also other people was pointing it out. So, it's good to have family or friends that can say, this is an issue or that is an issue. And then you take the steps towards, correcting that. So I'm happy about the points that you brought up about the journaling, positive self-talk, because that is very helpful. I also have a question. I'm sorry about I have a question. How would you teach self-awareness to a child versus an adult?
Okay, so in terms of children, children are learning to be a human and interact in society for the first time. So, what a lot of people may forget is that we have lived in this for how many decades that we just think it's innate and natural. But no, everything you learn how to operate in is taught. So, if they are lacking in self awareness, it's important to teach them and also sometimes allow them to make a mistake and be like, oop, okay, and figure that self-awareness. So for example, a classic kid thing is when you're walking down the street, they're just walking every which way, taking everything up, taking up the whole sidewalk, not recognizing the things on the ground, not seeing everything like that. So you can say like, hey, there are people, we share the sidewalk. So it's very important that you're actually being aware of your surroundings and you're sharing the space. But sometimes they might not fully follow that and they may bump into another person. And that's fine. Like sometimes learning through that can also be a really great tool. So we can say all these things, but also if they can safely make a mistake and learn that, oh, I can't do that, that's also a really good thing. So think about ways in which they can also kind of safely make mistakes and like realize that, oh, this is not appropriate because of this white thing. Okay, I should do this instead. So, and if they make a mistake, it's very important to correct and tell them that why this is not something that's inappropriate, or why this is something that's dangerous, or why this is something that is lacking in self-awareness. And that's terms of physical safety for kids. In terms of understanding themselves, I would say, depending on the age of the kid, if they're about 8 to 10 and stuff, they start having more personality and really understanding the things that they like and do not like in terms of activities. So I would go to them, lean to them, like, okay, what do you like? Oh, it seems like they're more into soccer than basketball. So lean to that and like lean into them and allow them to express themselves. So one mistake that adults may be making sometimes that they're not realizing is like, I want my kid to be this specific way. So they're too gung-ho on like a specific way of being that it makes people be unsure and insecure in themselves and not trust that they know what they like or they know what to do. So in allowing sometimes, especially if it's a very minor mistakes, like, oh, they spill juice, or they get markers on their shoes, something that's very small. Let them learn that this is something that they shouldn't do. Allow them to make the mistake so they can trust that they can fix those mistakes. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Florence, for that response. These are some of this mistake I made it as a parent, just trying to think like, oh, you want things to be perfect, you want things to be a certain way, But then as I grow in my parenthood, I learn to understand that, even if your child make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. The whole world is not going to end if they're working on this side and they're not doing it properly. But the most important thing is to tell them, oh, this is how you should consider doing this. But if they make a mistake, like Florence said, they can learn from that experience. The same thing can even go to when your child become teenagers and adult. You have to create a space where they can share with you, even sharing with you is not a perfect experience they're sharing. You have to still have that open mind of like let them experience world themselves and trust what you have poured into them, that will guide them. Even as we go next week, we're not going to touch that this week into social interaction. We're going to learn more about how we can interact with one another. What are the things and the tools that we should be using? So that we're going to be doing in 2 weeks. We're going to hear more from the audience, feedback, comments.
Hello, can I say something?
Yes.
Okay. self-awareness. I am aware of myself in certain areas. And one of the things is that, like, every day there's something I might do, say, or think, and it goes right back to my mother, right? Because of the things she taught us and things, how to behave. And one of the things they always say, ladies are not as seen and not heard. That means that we mustn't be boisterous and, behave on, in an unseemly manner and things like that. And for now that I realize that all what I was taught in that way, that I communicated to children. I communicate well with children. But the most important thing is that I had to work with autistic children for 18 years. And there is where, you really see yourself, the things, that you're aware of and how to teach it to them because you're really teaching them and things like that. So self-awareness, I think, is very important, that you have to know who you are, right? And where you are, who you are, where you are, who you are in different situations, different places, and things like that. So I think self-awareness is important to me. And
Okay.
it's a very good lesson.
Thank
Amen.
you. Thank you so much.
Yes, I would love to add that in terms of a parent and child relationship, it's going to be very hard to allow your child to build that self-awareness and figure out who they are if you don't allow yourself to do that for yourself. So if you don't feel the freedom to be your true self and your own self, it's going to be that much harder to try and do that for your children. So a lot of it, again, like the first relationship is you. So build that trust in yourself, build that confidence in yourself, and then allow yourself to be truly who you are. And that is going to be that much easier to allow your kids to do that, or to allow children in your life to do that.
You're gonna hold it. Hold it, Sister Ingrid. Not now.
All right.
Not now, Sister Ingrid. We want to Thank you. Finish your thought, Florence.
Oh, that was it.
Okay, great. Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a comment. This is
Go
Beverly.
ahead. Mhm.
Self-awareness is also includes knowing how to stand up for yourself and being assertive. And it took me a very long time into my adult years when I was at a very important job and I worked for a director in a cosmetics company. But at the time, even though I had very good skills, I was not very self-aware in how to let people know when something either was bothering me or when I thought they were being unfair. So I would just let things slide. And as it turns out, that was not a good way to handle it, but it took me going to an actual class on the outside of work to identify what that was. And what I found out was that there's assertive behavior and there's aggressive behavior. And I need to know how to stand up for myself and just be courageous enough to confront the person and say, I'm not happy with how things are going, or I don't think I should be doing this particular task. And just own up to it and not be afraid of, even if I was afraid, to say it anyway. So I just wanted to make that point because being assertive is very important to your maturity and your growth professionally and personally.
Yeah, great points. I like what you said, being assertive is not being aggressive. It's not. You can be assertive, stand for yourself, and not, you don't have to be aggressive about it, but it's your truth, and this is not how you want to be treated, so that's really great. Florence, you're muted. You were going to say something?
Yes, we're going to also go even further into that lovely point you brought up, Sister Beverly, and in relationship skills. So in the fourth part of this, we're going to even go deeper into how to deal with conflicts, how to assert yourself and your boundaries, and how to interact with that, and the importance of doing that. It's honoring yourself and being kind to yourself. So that's very important skill. So stay tuned for that.
Yes, stay tuned is all right. We can take one more comment if there's somebody else.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Oh, hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought it was really great the way the comments that was made on triggers. I know I've shared this with Sherry that Dr. Sherry, sorry, that sometimes you don't even realize the things that trigger you, and how they go so deep into your past and in fact affect your present relationships, you know. And I've had that experience with I've just shared with you quickly. I had a relative, a cousin that lived with me like a sibling, and he had sticky fingers. He was always taking things, and it wasn't until my children got much older that one of my daughters actually brought it to my attention. She said, "Mom, you always think somebody's taking your stuff." And I realized that because of that, the trigger was whenever I couldn't find something, in the back of my head was, did somebody take my stuff? So sometimes things from the past bring triggers into the future. So triggers are very tricky because you really have to be self-aware in terms of um, how that a trigger from the present could be so much into your past, and it may not even be the people. It may be things that are undealt with and how they impacted you from childhood and other experiences. So thank you so much for bringing that topic up, bringing that to light, how triggers are so impactful. Everything was really great. Appreciate all of your efforts in making us aware. Better people, more self-aware. We can be better to ourselves and better to others. Thank you so much, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And Minister Natasha is the Secretary of Relum Foundation. I'm just going to make some acknowledgement even as we come to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much, Florence. Florence Weiderman is our Chief of Staff for the Relum office in New York City. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. It's really joy, doing this presentation with you. It's amazing. I love you. And I see the work you have done in yourself that you continue to do. And I want all of us to even be intentional in doing that work, in being a better version of ourselves. But we have that ability. I want to also welcome people joining us from Nigeria, from Relum office in Nigeria. I actually see our Nigerian partner lawyer, Barrister Shaliwa, on the call. Thank you for joining us. I see Dr. Sander all the way from Nigeria in the northern part of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. I see some of our scholars from Nigeria. I see the chairman on the call. It's really been a wonderful conversation. So this is just part one, right? We have three more parts. So join us, stay tuned, engage. I see you, Mr. David, Mr. Itano. Thank you so much. I see you, Rosalind. Thank you for holding down the office in Nigeria. If anyone want to unmute and say hi, this is the time before we make our final announcement.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Mr. David.
Hello, everybody.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
It's a great meeting, and I enjoyed it.